Hello.
Hello.
Hello there. Hello there.
Wait, I want to do it again.
We don't have a common salutation.
Ohio.
Yeah, that could be one. that could be one.
It could.
It could.
Maybe like a right. You're saying like people
today?
people have sign offs, but what is our sign
People
on?
have sign offs. Some people have like super interesting intros too. I mean, everyone knows our intro. I don't know if we're getting rid of that. I don't think we are. Welcome back to Behind the Pixel. My name is Will.
My name is Kathryn.
And this is the podcast where we try to bridge the knowledge gap between those who buy creative content and those who make it. Today, we are having an opinion piece. Mm-hmm. Another one of these opinion pieces. Unscripted.
Right, we were calling them point of views.
A point of views. It's our point of views on other points of views, maybe. Something like that. I don't know.
Right, we're meta reacting.
It is a reaction video, in a way, a reaction podcast. Is that a thing?
I guess, probably.
But it's a little bit different because we want to kind of open up the discussion to what's happening in the industry. I think that's more important.
Yeah, definitely.
I came across. So, are you ready?
Sure, bring it.
I noticed there's a little dude inside of your jacket. What is that?
It's my little. I got it for Valentine's Day.
For those who are just listening, Kathryn has a tiny little crocheted. What do you call that?
I believe it's called a kodama, which is a character from Princess Mononoke, which is my favorite animated film of all time. For anyone who wanted to know or cared, fun fact.
It was crocheted by the Crochet Wizard
in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah, go check him out. See, all of his stuff is really cool. He had like a giant coughing and like Pokemon and all this other stuff.
It was very cool.
It was nerd haven. I loved it.
Okay, so are you ready for today's topic?
I am.
All right. So a little bit of backstory here. I am part of a you could call it a circle, an internal circle of folks who are business owners who talk to each other. It's an online community. And there was a recent discussion on one of the threads that I saw that really got me thinking about how we do our business and how other people do their business, and maybe the reasons why people might not do business with us or might want to do business with us because we don't do this. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting topic, and so I kind of wanted to bring it up. Okay. So
we're going in with no content. Yeah. Okay.
Going in blind. The original post.
Yes. Always read it verbatim.
It's titled "The Pitching Debate." I'm curious if any of you have signed this petition, and there's a link to the petition, or have refused to sign it. The debate about pitching has been around forever, and there seems to be good reason for each side of the argument. Can there be a universal agreement on this topic? That was the post. And so I was intrigued by that post. I clicked on it, and I read this. So the website is called nofreepitches.com. No free pitches.
Yeah.
And it's an open letter. And if you go there, you'll read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the bullet points.
Does it say who the open letter is to? Or is it
just... Yes, it's to clients and professionals of the creative industry.
Okay.
At the very top. I don't want to read this entire thing.
Sure.
But really big, bold letters that says, why not pitch for free? So here's the argument for not pitching for free. 1, pitching is a symptom of a broken system. 2, pitching is extremely time and resource intensive. 3, pitching mandates unreasonable deadlines that impede meaningful work. 4, pitching strains team mental health and motivation.
Mm.
5, pitching is political. Who you know is often as important as what you present.
Oh, okay.
6, pitching puts your ideas at risk of being used even if not selected. 7, pitching excludes many who don't have the resources to participate. 8, pitching creates an unfair playing field between big and small studios. 9, pitching is not the only option when it comes to evaluating a creative partner. And 10, pitching without pay is an outdated practice that no longer belongs in our industry.
Say it again from the back.
There's a little bit more in there, but I will let listeners and watchers, viewers, whoever, our audience, go check it out yourself.
Yeah,
it's just
list
a call
is pretty,
to petition. Yeah,
the list is pretty compelling. So, were there actual reasons why you wouldn't do that?
There's no for. There's
Okay.
no for argument.
So perhaps we can play the
which is a
devil's
little bit
advocate here and see
Yeah.
if there's a reason to do it. With I have to
So-
really think hard. But-
Yeah, I could probably play devil's advocate. I
Okay.
don't want to, but I could.
Maybe give
But
us
I
like
think-
one reason you can think of, or one reason why
Well,
somebody
let's not go there
might
yet.
not.
I think let's talk about what pitching is, and just to get everyone on the same page about how we understand what pitching is, and maybe
Mhm.
it might be different in other industries. So I think I want to put that caveat in there. Different industries. If you're selling animation, or if you're in entertainment, or if you're working with businesses or agencies, I think those all have a different system of pitching. There's
Also,
always,
baseball players.
So my feeling of it is that every industry has some form of pitching. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter what industry you're in. It could be manufacturing, and you could still have some sort of pitching system in
Could be
place.
cricket. Yes.
Could be cricket. It could be cricket. It could be soccer,
Sound? Could be a
football,
sound, like changing the
Football.
pitch.
football or soccer. One of those.
Oh, you're
two.
out on the pitch. Mhm.
Out on the pitch. Yes, exactly.
I derailed you. I'm sorry. I was on a roll
Hard.
with sports.
So pitching,
yes, what is pitching?
In our experience is basically you're trying to sell someone else on the other side of the table an idea, and usually someone has to buy into that idea. So let's take something that's not creative, manufacturing. I mean, it's creative in some capacities, but say you're manufacturing something and someone is talking about pitching you a new way of processing a piece of thing in your product, right? Like that's a pitch. Typically that falls into the sales category. It's a sales pitch. A creative pitch has a little bit more than just sales because it's creative ideas, right? So you're talking about how would you approach this particular outcome that we're trying to look for. So from a marketer's perspective, almost always you're sitting down and you're saying, we need to target XYZ people with this message. How would you approach that? And so you're going through each vendor maybe that's on your list, or any of the top 3 that you really love, and you're saying, let's get pitches from these 3 people or 3 companies, and figure out which approach speaks to us the best.
Right. Quick question. Is a pitch different than an RFP?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I think an RFP is the request for a pitch in a way, right?
Right. The pitch is the process of, yeah.
Yeah, RFP stands for request for proposal. A lot of companies do RFPs, and they already, if you've gone through writing an RFP, typically in the early on in the year, you're categorizing all the things that you already know you need in one document. And then you're putting that in front of studios and saying, give me a number, which is a little bit different than give me an approach.
Yeah.
Right. Almost always in an RFP, you have some sort of approach embedded into that RFP already. We want X number
right. It's
of
about
videos.
the cost, though, and more. Yeah.
It's more about the
timeline.
cost. Yeah. So you've gone beyond the conversation of we need to do some sort of marketing. We need to do some sort of tackling of this issue with these people, and we're looking for an approach. We found an approach. We decided on the approach, and now we're going to go put that in a document and send it to some folks
Right.
and have them respond to us. So
yeah, that's fair.
So that's what pitching is. If you have comments, please let us know. Put it in the review. Like I kind of, this idea of pitching is kind of a big deal. I think. Let me see how many people have signed this. 5,252 signatures.
That's
on this
not
petition.
Like
it's not nothing.
A small amount. Yeah.
It's not nothing.
So clearly there's a strong desire, a strong need, a strong demand. And yeah, so that's really interesting.
What's also interesting is that they give you the occupation and the company. So you can sort by company, you can filter out. You can also sort by occupation. There's a lot of 3D artists, a lot of 3D designers, a lot of account directors, account managers, agency founders, people that they call themselves agents for specific companies.
We put an open pixel on that list because that sounds good.
Well, so that's the question. Do we sign this petition or not? And how do we feel as maybe a company, but also how do we feel about the pitch as a whole? And
I guess. Yeah, I find that the idea of doing a pitch in general, to me, feels a little bit more like a one-way street where you are bringing your ideas and your expertise to the table and you're saying, look, this is how we would approach it. But it's for the sake of like then picking and choosing who might be the right one, as opposed to how I think we typically approach it, which is a little more like we want to start with open collaboration. We want to hear your ideas first and allow that to kind of organically flow, to be like, oh, well, how would you approach this? And then say, okay, we want to include your ideas into our ideas. Like if we're just coming at you with a pitch, not having established a relationship already and knowing what you like and what you don't like, and which I think is why this idea of pitching where you're usually the people who get picked are people who already have the established relationship with that client. Like it just kind of leads to inaccessibility. So yeah, and it feels like they're like, oh, okay, that idea sounds great. Let's just go with that. So it just feels less collaborative from that standpoint. It feels more transactional, but that's my, sort of outside observation of it. I'm curious how you see it.
Yeah, I think the reason people ask for a pitch in the first place, like let's break that down. Why are we even doing this? Well, one is because there's a lot of options for creative talent out in the world. There's, not infinite, but close to, at least 5,252 people have gone through pitches in some capacity. So, when you have that volume of talent that potentially could do the work, it's hard to decipher whether or not any one person is going to be the right fit. And so it's a lot like an interview when you're going through like a hiring cycle. So that's, I think, the reason why we have pitches in the first place. There are, I don't know how many, and this could be prevalent in the industry depending on where you work or, what state you work in or whatever like that. There could be people who ask for pitches who just take ideas and don't award work. So I think that's part of what this petition is calling out, is that some ideas get tossed in front of someone.
Right. They go with that idea, but maybe with a different studio.
Yeah, because they like the relationship more.
Yeah.
And so, why wouldn't you do that? But the other idea is,
how do you protect from that?
How do you protect your ideas? Yeah. Creative ideas are easily, tossed around. And I think that there's something about that. Like I've always thought like ideas are pretty cheap in terms of like coming up with them, because I'm a creative person. So like I'm always coming up with creative ideas, and the supply and demand in my mind.
Good for you, sir.
The supply and demand in my mind is like there's so much supply in here that like I can just give them out and I don't care, take them. Like you're not going to execute the way I can execute on an idea. And I think that's the real difference, is like the execution of an idea is more important to me. Now, that could not be the case for some folks. They might not feel that way. They might feel like if you took my idea and executed it just as well, maybe slightly differently, but now you've taken something from me that I put some effort into. Creative ideas come effortless to me. So,
oh boy. Yeah, go pitch that
kidding.
to somebody.
I'm kidding. But, I think there's something to be said about having ideas stolen for sure. And like creative ideas have been stolen. And then whether or not executing them is the same.
Well, there's also,
'cause you still have to put in the work.
Yeah. They mentioned in the article there too, or in the letter, that like it's working off of a broken system. And one of the times where I thought the system was broken was when we went to go pitch to a certain company, and we had to pay for everybody's lunch that went to the meeting, which felt weird. It felt like, weird. I was like, so not only do we have to spend time and effort and like internal costs to make this pitch for you, but now we also have to pay, like, it was something like $1,000 or something to like go buy everybody lunch that's going to be in this meeting. No one told us who was going to be in this meeting, so we didn't know how to build a relationship in advance. Like, it just felt like a lot was working against you from the start. So you kind of like go into those meetings with that. If you go into that meeting with that kind of mentality, it's like it's doomed from the start. So why bother? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's another thing too that, I see a lot of studios and a lot of agencies building up their rosters. And I think that a roster is great to have. We have a roster of folks, but like, we don't ask any one of our people to pitch to us how they would approach this particular thing in this project. Like, I think, having an internal filtering system for yourself as an agency, as a company, as a studio, whatever, it's probably really important for you to have one of those things, because then you're not putting the work on another company. Like, and I kind of get it. Like, you're working for free, right? Like, you're putting in, and some of these pitches can get really elaborate. Some folks have gone and made entire sections of video, like animated, 3D rendered whole things. They go out and pitch, and then they say, like, look here, I've made this already. And it's all in the hopes they think that you land the job or sell the thing. And I think that that's the wrong way of doing it.
Yeah. And then of course it ties into this idea now of like, the more that people start to use like AI in their pitching, right? To say like, I'm going to make this concept to show what it could look like. It's going to be faster maybe than doing the full 3D render or something. But then you run into that issue of like, are you going to be able to execute on that?
Yeah, that was our last episode. We talked about that. Yeah.
So it kind of all circles back. I hate using business jargon, but sometimes that one creeps up. But yeah, so I think it. It sounds to me.
I think there's an opportunity here to talk about how we do pitching internally as part of the project. I think that's important to like. How do we circumnavigate pitching?
How do we?
Because I don't think we've never really pitched. We've pitched once, like the one you mentioned, maybe twice. But we were pitching ourselves as a studio, as a vendor, rather than we're pitching for this project. And I think that we've gotten projects, we just haven't pitched because we don't do it that way. And I think that's part of our sales cycle. So I don't know do you want me to go into how we pitch differently? So I used to work in sales. I worked at AT&T a long time ago. They taught us to ask clarifying questions. And that was a really good way of figuring out, going down the line to what you're actually wanting. And typically when you work with us, you come to our doors through a phone call or an email, and you're asking us for something specific. And typically we don't answer right away because we want to know more, and we want to ask those clarifying questions because everyone has an idea of what they want in their head, and it's not usually what they need. And I think that that's, when you come to someone who's been doing it for a really long time, we have a better sense of what is best for you, depending on what your goals are. So what I do when I get a sales call is I'll ask a bunch of questions, which we've outlined in a separate document. And we take those questions, and really they're about things that you almost always would see in an RFP, but maybe going even a little deeper than that. And that initial call is really just to get us a sense of cost. We're trying to figure out what the thing's going to cost before we actually tell you what the ideas are. And I think separating those two things out, because usually when you're trying to pitch, you're trying to say, okay, well, what's the idea and what's the cost? And those two are two separate pieces of information. You can have a cost, which usually most people buy from, right? You say, oh, what does it cost? Okay. What's the idea? And I think that some people come with the idea first. Okay, what's the idea? Okay, well, what's that idea going to cost? Okay, well, that might not be the right method. And so why do I put the idea first if the cost is not going to justify anything? So let's talk about what you need and give you a cost. So I'm kind of circumventing the idea of presenting anything that's creative to you from your own project. We present creative that's from our past projects. We use past data, past projects, past things to show you what we've done in the past and prove, because really that's all you're trying to do, prove that we can do it. And then here's a cost based on our conversation. So we're kind of flipping the switch there. The pitching actually is part of a stage inside of our production process. So when we talk about concepts, that's the point at which we're actually pitching. When we talk about scripts, that's the point where we're actually pitching our creative ideas and our concept ideas, our visual ideas. Those two elements, script, concept, those are the things that form, at least in the animation industry, those are the things that form, and animation specifically, again, for marketing, communication, that kind of thing. That's the thing that's going to form your project. And that's why all of our projects looks entirely different. Like every single project you see, there's no one cohesive, like stylistic thing. And usually I think studios try to go that way, is like, we want to put our stamp on this, but our whole goal is let's make it the right thing for your audience, right? Let's make it the right look, feel, visual, whatever for your audience. And not every audience is the same. So that's how I've thought of pitching. Like every time we talk about let's write some creative ideas down in a script, we're pitching those ideas, right? And you've already paid for that because we know that we're going to work through that. And we're going to work through that together. It's not a one-way, here's my idea. And like, no idea is a one-way street. Like you have to work with collaboration. Like there's no way, right? If you don't put collaboration at the forefront of your creative ideas, then it's an ego game. It's like my ideas are better than your ideas, right? Let me pitch you. Here's this idea. Is that better than that idea? I don't know, right? So that's how I feel about it. But I don't know. What do you think?
I have no comment. No notes, I guess.
No notes. All of that is to say that we may sign this petition.
I think that's where we're going, yeah.
Because I kind of agree. I don't think you should put in time for free. You just shouldn't. There are certain situations where we have done work for free in very specific circumstances, but oftentimes because our time is our, is what we're selling, that's you should pay us for that. I think that's how every freelancer feels, at least. And most company owners also feel that way. So, I think we'll leave it there. I think that's a good place to stop. If you want to look at the petition, check it out. We're going to link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah. So thank you all for listening, unless you have any other thoughts.
No, I think you're good.
Thank you all for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Happy post-Lovers Day.
Right. This is showing up, I think, a week after Big Love Day.
Big Love is out there.
Big Love is out there.
Big chocolate,
Yo, definitely chocolate. Yeah. I know that on Valentine's Day this year, sales are expected to grow by 20-25%.
Crazy. Just buy it the day after.
Buy it the day after.
Get the sale. Get those deals.
I was going to say, that's why I love you, honey.
Oh.
We will see you in the next episode.
All right. See ya.